wormholes, particle physics, extra dimensions. Are the wonders of so-called reality really what they appear to be? Or do we exist in an elaborate hologram? Is our universe the result of random activity or the result of intelligent design? If a creator was involved, can we discover him through our perception of divine order? This is Into the Multiverse with Josh Peck.
Get ready for so many multiverse. Welcome to Into the Multiverse. I am your host, Josh Peck, and with me in studio, my lovely, still pregnant, beautiful wife.
Still pregnant.
And actually, we're recording a lot of these ahead of time, so by the time this airs, you'll be even more pregnant.
I will be even more pregnant.
Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
Well, at the time of this recording, we're about 3 months away, but by the time this airs, maybe 2 months or something.
Maybe even a month and a half left.
Imagine that.
I know. Are you scared?
Yeah, a little. Well, I always this is our third child, so we've kind of been through it. But again, it's our third child, and 2 is already. Whew. So, but yeah.
One for each arm, and then I can hand one off to you.
Yay! Today we're going to be we're talking about demonic manifestations, and this is actually sort of a continuation from last week's episode. But before we get into that, where can people find us online?
Okay, youtube.com/Into the Multiverse, and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, or else you can go to skywatchtv.com. And you can scroll down, find our banner, click on it, takes you right to the YouTube channel. Or you can catch us on Roku under the Skywatch TV channel.
Excellent. Make sure you do that. And again, I know we tell you to subscribe a lot. We say that a lot throughout the show, but it is really important. If you're interested in the show, then you'll have all past episodes. You'll have all future ones. You'll get notifications if you want them, and it helps us out too. So make sure you subscribe. So demonic manifestations. This kind of continues on from our last episode. We talked about demons, fallen angels, the fourth dimension, where we think these things are, possibly.
Yeah.
And so this episode, we've actually been getting a lot of email, and this is why we wanted to tackle this. We've been getting a lot of emails about actual, real demonic manifestations, people seeing these things, and we don't doubt it. I mean, we've been through some stuff that we'll talk about in this episode.
Yeah, absolutely. Lots of good stories coming up.
Yeah, we wanted to take an episode to really get into this because you and I have been through a lot, and we don't want anybody to think that they're alone in it or that they're crazy. Yeah, because it is and you and I know it's hard to talk about these things to a lot of because people generally don't know how to handle it.
And sadly, even in the church, it's a lot of hush hush.
Yeah, because it's usually if somebody doesn't know how to deal with something, it's just easier to put it to naturalize it, and you're probably dreaming, or it's probably just your imagination.
And some of it can be explained scientifically, but
sure.
There are things that are definitely more spiritual.
Yeah. So we're going to be talking about those. I want to read an email that we actually got, and this is why we put this show together. And for you at home, if you do have questions or suggestions for shows or comments, you can email me at jpeck@skywatchtv.com. We do read those emails. We're not able to respond to every single one,
right?
Because we get quite a few, but we do read them,
and we take them into consideration. We put them into our shows.
Yes.
Yep.
So this email comes from James. He writes, "Hi Josh, love the whole Skywatch family and your show. I don't know if you have already done a show on night terrors. If you have not, I would like it if you could do one. The closer my son and I get to God, we start getting attacked with them. Paralyzed, fighting forever, it seems, to just get Jesus out of our mouth and then say it over. I've heard this is a typical scenario. Well, thanks, and you and your wife are doing a great job, and your shows are just as important as the rest. May the Lord bless you and your family even more." From James. So thank you, James, for that email. And boy, I can relate to that, and I know you can too.
Yeah.
We haven't done an episode on night terrors specifically, but we've talked a little bit about sleep paralysis. And I think that might actually be what he's referring to here, even though they sometimes they can go hand in hand. I mean, I've had night terrors that turned into sleep paralysis, or sleep paralysis that turns into night terrors. So, you know, sometimes they go hand in hand.
Yeah.
It's a really good question. So we wanted to dedicate the whole show to this.
Yes. It's very important. I know as a child you experienced less of this. I did too. I remember hearing things. My closet door would open sometimes as a kid, you know. And I would hear things come up the stairs. My room was on the very top floor. And my mom and dad's room was on one end and mine was on the other, and then there was a study in the middle. My mom and dad would have date nights. They'd go out a lot, and I would be home with my older brothers and my sister. And when I would go to bed, and they would have friends over and stuff like that. And I remember I was up late at night. I was reading a book, trying to go to sleep, and I could just hear, footsteps coming up the stairs. I'm like, well, that's weird. And I had my light on, and then I was like, well, maybe somebody's coming up to see if I'm sleeping. So I kind of pretend I was sleeping, but I might have my eyes open a little bit. There was absolutely nobody there. And and as a kid, sometimes I would be awake still, trying to go to sleep, very uneasy, kind of hear my closet door creak open. It could have been a number of things from whoever, what kind of friends my older brothers and my sister were having over, or various things like that. I didn't start feeling the sleep paralysis until I was 14. That was the first physical feeling that I got. And oddly enough, this is the first. It was on September 11th, 2001.
Really? Oh, what was the whole situation? What?
I woke up, and I was 14 years old, and I just had this horrible heaviness come over me in my room. I decided that I was going to go into my parents' room. Yes, at 14 years of age, I was going to go into my parents' room, but I slept on the floor, down there. I mean, I was very uneasy. It really takes a lot for me to be like, okay, I'm out of my room, going into another room now. Yeah. And I remember I was laying there, and then all of a sudden these images of just horrific things were going through my head, and I just felt like this.
Like what kind of?
Like horror.
Okay.
Like horror and gory, really grotesque images.
Okay.
And I'm not one for horror movies. I like psychological thrillers, but this was different. And I could feel it from my legs come all the way up, and then I would wake up or kind of get out of it. I'm like, what the heck was that? And then again, I would kind of try falling asleep, and then these images would come back in my head. And then all of a sudden, I couldn't move. I couldn't get it out of that. I just felt like something just fell on top of me. Ooh. And I just could not move. It started from my feet, and it went all the way up here, and I felt like I was being choked to death. And that was the oddest feeling. It was the first time I had that happen.
Wow.
And I remember waking up that morning. I was like, Mom, I don't want to go to school today. I was a freshman in high school. I had this thing happen to me last night. And she's like, oh, and I was like, I just feel really uneasy about something. I don't know why. I ended up going to school anyway. And then they turned on the TVs, and we got to see the whole thing happen.
Wow.
And I was in American history class when we were watching that. But it was that was the first time, and so forever I will remember the first date that I've had sleep paralysis.
Wow.
But yeah.
And I know you've had it a few times after that as well.
Yeah, that was just the first time. But
wow.
Yeah, I was 14.
Yeah, that's awful. I remember that. I don't remember the first time that I had it. I remember I've had it ever since I was a kid, since before I can remember. So I don't know what the first time was. But I remember being really my details I won't get into in this episode, but my mom and dad had a lot of problems when I was a little kid, and there were there were things going on in the house that probably shouldn't have been going on. I mean, even things involving Ouija boards and stuff.
Right.
But at the time, I didn't know about any of that when I was a kid. I didn't find out about that till years and years later. But I remember when I was a kid, even though I wasn't exposed to that, I didn't know any of that stuff was going on. But even though I wasn't exposed to that, I remember just being scared at night a lot. I remember I don't actually remember hearing voices, but I remember being really afraid and like running out of my room and crying to my mom that I was hearing voices like laughing at me and stuff.
Oh wow.
I don't remember actually the voices themselves, but I remember being really afraid of that. I remember one really weird thing that happened. Apparently, and my mom told me years later that when I was really little, I used to be afraid that there was a monster in the backyard or there was something in the backyard that I was afraid of. And usually with kids, you hear, monster under the bed or monster in the closet, somewhere in close proximity that would make it scary. But for me, I guess it was the backyard. And I don't know why. I don't remember that because I was too young. But she remembered telling me that. But I do remember one day I woke up and or one morning I woke up and I heard my mom and dad talking in the backyard, and there were neighbors over and stuff, and I didn't know what was going on. So I went out there, and all the grass, we lived in just a normal neighborhood, like house in Flint, not like the really rundown, but this was, years and years ago. It wasn't, it was a good place to grow up.
It was a nice place at the time,
but
right?
It's not like we had a big yard or anything, it was just an average size. But all the grass in our backyard, only our backyard, not the front yard, all the grass was flattened.
Oh, weird.
Yeah, it was flattened. And we could not, I mean, I was a kid, so of course I couldn't figure it out, but my mom and dad and the neighbors could not figure out how that would even be possible. Like, even if it was a prank, how would you even do that, and why? And what they settled on is, well, maybe some deer came into the yard and just laid down, but it would have had to have been...
It's a lot of deer in the city.
You would be able to pack 100 deer, and they would have all had to been side by side. I mean, there wasn't a single blade of grass that was standing up, which is really weird. Never got any closure on that. I have no answers to provide on what that was.
Wow.
But I do remember dealing with sleep paralysis, and especially more in my teen years, which we're going to get more into. I hate to break up the talk, but I do have some important information from Skywatch TV. When we come back, more on sleep paralysis, and if you're dealing with it, what you can do about it when we come back.
Save nearly half off the cover price when you subscribe now to the brand new Skywatch TV magazine. For a limited time, a 5-year subscription to Skywatch TV magazine is just $99. That's more than $75 off the cover price, which is like getting 2 years for free. Exclusive content, articles on prophecy, discovery, and the supernatural from Tom Horn, Chris Putnam, Josh Peck, science updates from Sharon K. Gilbert, geopolitics from yours truly, and guest writers like Pulitzer Prize-nominated journalist Troy Anderson, renowned Bible scholar Dr. Michael Heiser, Pentagon advisor Lieutenant Colonel Bob McGinnis, and more. But there is more. As an early subscriber, you'll be the first to get this new book from Defender Publishing. I predict what 12 global experts believe you'll see by 2025. This is a $20 value and includes best-selling authors like Joel Richardson, Mark Biltz, Carl Gallups, Tom Horn, Paul McGuire, and more. Find out what they think about the coming war between ISIS and the Vatican, the future of the Temple Mount and the Ark of the Covenant, a worldwide manifestation of angels, and the coming age of human hybrids. And we'll also add this DVD, The Best of Skywatch TV 2015, a $25 value, including our most compelling interviews from last year, including Chuck Missler, Steve Quayle, the discussion of the Georgia Guidestones with Chris Pinto, and more. All of this together worth more than $200. Yours now for just $99. Subscribe now. Skywatch TV Magazine. Just call the number on your screen or log on to skywatchtvstore.com.
All right, welcome back to Into the Multiverse. Again, I am your host, Josh Peck. Don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube, and also check out the other shows that Skywatch TV has. Right now, there's Sci Friday and Skywatch Women One-on-One, and of course, the main Skywatch TV broadcast. So make sure to check those out. So before the break, we were talking about sleep paralysis, and I had left off when I was a teenager. I remember really dealing with this a lot. And I would have questions about it and ask my parents and ask people at my church, what, I don't know what's going on. Well, Josh, it's just bad dreams,
Yeah.
But I remember actual manifestations that I interpreted as being demonic at the time. And of course, it is. They are. One specifically, and I don't mean to dominate the conversation here, but
that's fine.
one specifically was, I remember I was probably about 14, like you were, and I was, or actually I might have been about 12. But anyway, I was laying in bed. I had woken up, and I could not move. And this is what really, I was brought back to this from James's email. I remember I couldn't move. I couldn't talk. I wanted to yell out to Jesus, but I couldn't. And I remember when this would happen, what I would do is I would run the name Jesus through my head over and over and over again in my mind until eventually it would loosen up enough for me to be able to actually pray or something. That's what I started doing after, but back then I didn't know about spiritual warfare or anything like that. So I was laying facing my door, and I couldn't move, and I heard. I always kept my door closed because we had cats, and I didn't want the cats coming in and waking me up all throughout the night. So I always had my door closed, and I heard something on the other side of the door, and I figured that it was probably the cats. And I didn't really think anything about it, but there was also this really just heavy feeling in the air, and it's impossible to describe, but if it's one of those things, if you know what I'm talking about.
Oh, I do. Yeah, absolutely.
Even though I was trying to rationalize in my head it's probably the cats, I knew it was something that it wasn't the cats, and I needed to be afraid. So I saw the doorknob open, and the door swung open, and this thing came in. It was really dark, cloaked, and that's all I could really see because it was just so dark. And it came in, looked right at me, stood on the side of my bed, and I remember it actually leaned over me and it put its hand on the bed where I could actually feel the bed. Like that made it so real. I could no longer just say maybe, oh, to God, this is a dream. I couldn't rationalize that like that anymore. This was real. It was actually manipulating the physical reality around me. Scared me to death. Now I don't remember. I do remember coming out of the sleep paralysis after it left the room, but I came out of the sleep paralysis, and I don't know if it was just because I was so scared or what. I was just instantly unconscious again. I think I had passed out or something.
Oh,
I woke up the next morning. I asked my mom and my stepdad if they had, because my door was still open. That was the thing.
Oh, wow.
My door was still open. So I asked my mom and my stepdad when they got up, I was the first one to wake up, if they had opened my door in the middle of the night, because I'm still trying to rationalize maybe this was a dream somehow. They didn't open my door. The cats obviously didn't. So I was just left with that something demonic came into my room and attacked me.
Right.
So, my mom and stepdad tried to say that it was just a bad dream and, but it kept happening. Eventually, my mom actually ended up admitting to me that she had the same stuff happen, sleep paralysis.
Yeah.
And it just continued on. What eventually did it, stopped it for me, was a few years ago, I did an interview with Chris White.
Yes.
Who he wrote a book, Sleep Paralysis: What It Is and How to Stop It, or something like that. And at this point, I was already, if this would happen, I would already be, casting it out in the name of Jesus or something like that. But he actually suggested casting them to the abyss, that they're afraid of the bottomless pit, and he used the example that of when Jesus confronted Legion.
That's right, and he didn't want to be sent, or they didn't want to be sent to the abyss.
And he basically said, you do that one time, they're not going to mess with you. They're petrified of that. He said, I've had more success from that of actually being able to stop this phenomena than anything else. So I did, and by that point, it would happen every now and then, but that stopped it. I haven't had,
no, I remember
every great once in a while, I'll still get, a sleep paralysis attack. Same with you.
Yeah, well, yeah, every once in a while. I remember when we first got married. It was like
the trailer.
nightly with you.
Yep.
And yes, we were
Well,
living
at
in
this time, I was into New Age stuff.
Yes.
I wasn't. I don't want to say that I wasn't saved because I don't know, but I wasn't like a practicing
You weren't
Christian.
practicing Christian.
Yeah.
So that had a lot to do with that. And we lived in this trailer when we got married. Something very horrible happened there. There was a murder.
A girl was murdered.
A girl
6 months before we bought the place.
6 months before we got the place.
Those who knew and loved 17-year-old Jessica Kelsey are still shaking their heads in disbelief tonight as her 19-year-old brother sits in the Oakland County Jail awaiting arraignment on a charge of murder. The Oakland County Sheriff and his investigators say they believe the young soldier, home on leave from basic training, stabbed his sister to death sometime after celebrating New Year's Eve with his sister and some other family members and friends at their home on Grant Drive in Highland Township. A backpack and some clothing found on a dumpster at a restaurant in Heartland on New Year's Day gave police a first clue that something was wrong. A waitress said she found bloody knives in the pack, and it's reported the brother's ID was found in it as well. Jessica's mom is the one who found her daughter's body in her bedroom, and hours later her 19-year-old son was arrested as the prime suspect in the murder.
Long story, but young girl was murdered by her brother there, and I believe that opened up a portal, a doorway. I mean, something like that would definitely leave a doorway open. But we would hear things that would crash in the bathroom. In the bathroom,
we'd go in there, and nothing
would be moved. Or sometimes there were a couple times where I'd heard this loud crash, and I'd go in, and there was something on the floor. But things like that used to happen a lot in our room at night. I remember you said that you had an experience and you saw something just kind of like crouching on our bed when I was at work.
Yep. I vividly remember that.
And then I remember a couple nights later, we were getting ready for bed. We just turned off our TV. And our dresser moved. Remember that? We had that this something jumped on top of it.
That little thing.
It was little.
Yeah.
It was.
We both saw it, and that wasn't even a sleep paralysis deal or anything.
No,
that was a direct manifestation.
It looked like this little creature.
Yeah, and this was before we heard anything about researchers like J.C. Johnson call them little people.
Yeah.
This was before years before we had ever heard anything like that.
When we finally heard that, we're like, oh my gosh, that's like that thing we saw.
Yeah.
It jumped on our dresser and it knocked over my jewelry box.
Yep.
And I was like, it scared me. I was sleeping. Yeah. I wasn't sleeping yet, but I was laying right next to our dresser.
Yep.
So I came face to face with this thing. It was like, whoa.
Yeah.
That was the creepiest thing ever.
Yeah, that was horrifying. That was one of the.
That was the worst place we've ever lived in our lives.
Well, we actually had an atheist roommate at the time.
Oh yeah.
Who didn't believe in anything and didn't. She didn't know because at this time I was doing astral projection and remote viewing and all this stupid stuff I shouldn't have had any part in. But I didn't. I didn't know what I was doing, and. But she didn't know any of that. I didn't really talk.
She didn't believe in any of it. She didn't believe in it.
And we didn't tell her about any of our experiences because what would be the point?
She's atheist. She doesn't care.
Well, she actually came to me one day and said, Josh, I saw something horrifying yesterday.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Or last night. Yeah, and this is from somebody who didn't believe in any of that. But she described seeing an orb of light in the living room that she just got the worst feeling from. Like she felt like this whatever it was angry, and it zoomed into our room.
Yeah.
And I don't remember because there were so many of them. I don't remember the exact instance, but I know that it was on a night that we had something like that, like some type of manifestation.
Yeah.
Long story short, God was able to use that for us, though. All the stupid stuff I was doing and all these just horrific manifestations to basically lead us into what we're doing now. I was just sitting down watching TV, and this show called It's Supernatural with Sid Roth came on, and there was a guy named L.A. Marzulli on there, and never heard of him before. I never heard of Genesis 6, never heard of Nephilim, didn't know anything about anything. And all of a sudden, he's talking about aliens and the Bible, and I'd always been interested in that, like how do aliens and the Bible fit together. He was talking about that, Mark of the Beast, alien implants, all this just mind-blowing stuff I had never heard before, which now to us is kind of like basic 101, but at the time, we'd never heard that before.
It changed our lives.
It really did, and that's probably, by that time, that was probably the 1,000th time that he's gone through that, that was probably, to people who follow his ministry, by that was probably old news, but to us, it was brand new. And it really changed our lives. Well, I had taped it, waited till you got home. We watched it together. We actually started doing Bible studies together for the first time ever, praying together more. And then that was when I started feeling like I wanted to write a book after we were doing a lot, after a lot of research and everything, and we started getting a handle on it. What we started realizing, though, was the more I was writing and the more I was actively trying to expose the works of the enemy. And I had renounced New Age, and I was, I was a good practicing Christian. And, but the manifestations were getting worse and more frequent and more physical, and it was getting bad, to the point that we were all sleeping in the living room, like me, you, our atheist roommate, her son. So, I mean, it got bad. I took a chance, sent L.A. Marzulli an email, and I didn't think I'd hear anything back from him. Here's a guy that's on TV. What chance am I going to have that I'm going to get to talk to him? And but he actually, his wife got a hold of me, gave me his number, and said he wants to talk to you. Can you call him? So I said, yeah. And remember how nervous and excited I was about that?
Yeah, that was really cool.
Yeah, but he gave me a crash course in spiritual warfare, using the name of Jesus to cast these things out and to close any portals that might be open. That was a big thing. I had never heard that before. I didn't know what was going to happen. So I sent you off to the store.
That's right.
Yeah, and I went through the house and every room, did everything LA said to do, it's just basically boils down to using the name and authority of Jesus to cast these things out. Saying things like, in the name of Jesus, I command you to leave. This is a house of God. We dedicate this house to God. Evil spirits don't have any place here in the name of Jesus, that kind of stuff. But also to close any portals that might be opened. And after that, we didn't have any problems.
No, every once in a great while after that.
And, we live in a fallen world full of demons.
Things come and go.
Things are going to come and go. But the actual, whatever was actually attached to that house, or that was actually...
It was gone.
It was gone. We didn't have any problems with it. So we're running out of time. But it does all boil down to, if you're dealing with this at home, whether it's sleep paralysis or demonic manifestations or any kind of thing like that, use the name of Jesus to cast these things out. And also to close any portals that might be open. And we also probably should mention, I don't like jumping to this as the first thing, but it's a good idea to pray and ask God to show you any sin that you might be involved in that might be inviting these things in. Again, we're out of time. We're actually a little over time, but I want to thank James for sending that email. I hope that this episode was able to answer some of your questions, and to those out there who might be dealing with this or even just wondering about it. Again, there's various places you can find us online. YouTube's the best place to go. Subscribe to us. If you have any questions or comments for us, you can email me at jpeck@skywatchtv.com. Thank you for joining us, and as always, take care and God bless.